I always thought family was supposed to lift you up, not use you. But when you grow up in a small home where money is tight and expectations are heavy, you learn fast that not every lesson feels fair. My story begins in a place where love was mixed with pressure, where loyalty was demanded instead of earned, and where I spent years believing that sacrifice was the only way to keep peace. I didn't know then that the sacrifices I was making would shape the person I'd become, or that one day I would be standing on the other side of everything, a self-made millionaire, staring back at the people who once controlled every piece of my paycheck. It still feels strange to say it out loud. I was barely 17 when I got my first job, and before I even touched my first paycheck, my mom had already decided where it would go. Not to savings. Not to help with bills. Not even to buy myself new clothes for school. No. Every cent, every dollar, every single paycheck was handed directly to my older sister. She needs it more than you, my mom would say. You're young. You'll understand later. And because I grew up listening instead of questioning, I obeyed. Month after month. Year after year. My sister, Liana, was the golden child, beautiful, talented, outspoken, and always the one everyone believed in. She had dreams of starting her own business, traveling the world, living big, and mom treated her like she already had one foot in success. The problem? Liana wasn't responsible. The money I was working hard for, long shifts, sore feet, sometimes skipped meals, was being dumped into her hands with no plan, no accountability, no gratitude. Still I stayed quiet. It was easier to accept the role they gave me. The helper, the backup, the one who sacrificed so the star of the family could shine. I carried bitterness quietly. I would lie awake at night calculating how much I could have saved if I'd kept even half the money. By the time I turned 20, I realized I had given away more than most young adults even earn in their first jobs. I didn't drive. I didn't have savings. I didn't buy anything nice for myself. But my sister? She had designer bags, nights out with friends, and a habit of acting like she was doing me a favor by letting me support her. But this isn't a sad story. Not really. Because something changed. And it changed fast. It started the day I got tired. Tired of being invisible, tired of always giving, tired of watching someone else enjoy the comfort I paid for. I remember finishing a long shift at a delivery warehouse, the kind that leaves your back stiff and your mind foggy, and on my way home I saw my sister's social media post. She was out at a fancy restaurant, captioning her photo with, "Living the soft life. Hard work pays off." Hard work. Her hard work? I stared at that screen until something in me snapped. That was the moment I made my quiet promise. I would never let anyone control my life or my money again. I found a second job, then a third. I started saving in secret, telling my mom I was earning less than I really was. I worked late nights, early mornings, and spent hours learning about side hustles, investing, business, and anything that could build me a future I could actually call mine. My mom thought I was tired because of work. She had no idea I was building something bigger, something that didn't involve giving away my paychecks anymore. And while my sister was still spending money faster than it came, I was grinding every single day. No shortcuts. No handouts. Just discipline, hunger, and a level of determination no one saw coming. I didn't announce anything. I didn't show off. I didn't need approval. I was building in silence. The years that followed were a blur of learning, failing, trying again, stacking small wins, and pushing past every doubt I'd been raised with. I invested in a small online business. Then another. Some failed. Some took off. I learned to flip the failures into lessons and the lessons into money. I eventually built a brand that exploded faster than I imagined, selling simple products I designed by hand in my tiny room. Orders came in one at a time, then dozens at a time, and eventually, thousands. I remember the first time I saw my bank balance hit 6 figures. Then 7. Me, someone who used to hand over paychecks without even opening the envelope. Someone who couldn't buy a $10 meal without guilt. Someone who spent years believing they had nothing to offer but obedience. The funny thing about success is that it doesn't make you loud. It makes you calm. I kept working, kept building, kept growing. But I also kept quiet. My family thought I was still the broke one, the responsible one, the good child who doesn't care about money. And for a long time I let them keep believing it. But everything changed the day my sister showed up at my new place, completely unaware of how far I'd come, crying, shaking, and begging for help. The same sister I sacrificed for. The same sister who lived off my paychecks while treating me like an afterthought. The same sister who once called me too simple to ever be successful. She stood there at my door, desperate. And for the first time in my life she needed me. I wasn't expecting the moment to feel like it did. Part of me wanted to close the door. Part of me wanted to remind her of every selfish thing she ever did. But the truth? I just stared at her, stunned. Because everything had flipped, so sharply, so dramatically, that it almost didn't feel real. My sister, the golden child, the one everyone believed in, was sinking. And I, the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one who gave until it hurt, was now the person she depended on. What she wanted, what she asked me, and what I decided to do next, is the part of the story that changed everything. And that is where the real twist begins. I didn't invite her in right away. I just stood there with the door halfway open, watching her wipe mascara streaks off her cheeks. She looked nothing like the confident, flashy sister I grew up with. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair messy, and her eyes looked scared. It was strange seeing her that way, like the world had finally stopped protecting her. 4 years everyone in the family treated her like she deserved more, like life owed her success. Now she looked like someone who'd been running from something for a long time and finally ran out of road. She kept glancing behind her as if someone might be following, then back at me like she wasn't sure I would help. I didn't say anything at first. I just waited. I wanted to hear what she'd say without me pushing. She finally took a shaky breath and whispered, "I messed up. I really messed up. And I don't know where else to go." Hearing that felt unreal. My sister, the same person who used to look down on my simple choices and quiet lifestyle, was now begging me for a lifeline. But I didn't ask what happened. Not yet. Because to really understand the moment, you need to know what led us here, how things started falling apart long before she showed up at my door. Growing up, I never fully understood why my mom favored her. Maybe it was because she was the firstborn. Maybe because she reminded my mom of the dreams she never got to chase. My mom would brag about Liana every chance she got, telling everyone about her talent, her beauty, her potential. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one. The kid who didn't cause trouble, the one who did chores, the one who stayed quiet during arguments. It wasn't that my mom didn't love me. She just didn't see me. Not really. When Liana started college, the pressure on me doubled. My mom acted like her success depended on the entire family sacrificing whatever it took. I was 16 when she first told me, "Your sister has a bright future. You're strong enough to help her." And I believed her. I thought this was normal, that siblings were supposed to help each other, that giving up my paychecks made me a good person. But as time passed, small cracks started showing. Liana wasn't using the money for books or school fees. She was buying clothes, new phones, going out with friends. When I tried asking why she needed so much, she'd snap, "You don't get it. Mom said you're supposed to help." And I would feel guilty, like I was failing her by questioning anything. The pressure only got heavier when my sister dropped out of college without telling anyone. My mom defended her, saying she needed a break to figure things out. But breaks don't last years. And they shouldn't be funded by someone who could barely afford bus fare. Still, I said nothing. I kept working, kept giving, kept sacrificing. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know I was allowed to. But while my sister drifted from one plan to another, makeup artist, influencer, singer, small business owner, I watched her habits get worse. She spent like money was endless. She believed success would just fall into her hands. And my mom kept encouraging her, telling her she was meant for greatness, as if saying it was the same as earning it. Meanwhile, I was discovering things she never took seriously. Hard work, independence, quiet growth. While she posted selfies and vacation photos, I was learning how to manage money, how to build something stable, how to rely on myself instead of others. But I kept my progress hidden. Not because I wanted revenge or anything dramatic. I just didn't want to hear comments like, "Don't get ahead of yourself," or, "That's not for people like us." The truth was, I didn't fit the identity they built for me. They saw me as the helper, the supporter. Not someone who could rise on my own. But life has a way of shifting when you least expect it. The day I secretly opened my own online shop was one of the scariest choices I made. I felt guilty for not telling my family, guilty for wanting something for myself. I didn't know if the business would work or if I'd lose the little savings I had managed to hide. But it felt good, terrifying but good, to finally make a decision that was mine. It didn't take off immediately. The first few months, I barely had a handful of customers. I made mistakes, wasted money on things I didn't need, and almost quit more times than I could count. But I kept going. I learned from every setback. I improved my designs. I watched videos, read articles, studied people who built their own success. While my sister partied, I stayed up until sunrise creating products and sending out orders before work. Slowly, things began to change. A big influencer randomly found one of my items and posted about it. Orders exploded. I had to hire my first part-time helper. Then another. My small online shop turned into a real business. And the more my sister drifted, the more I grew. My mom had no idea. She thought I was still struggling, still working extra shifts because I didn't have direction. She never asked about my goals. She didn't think I had any. But the hardest part wasn't the business. It was watching my sister spiral without realizing how deep she was sinking. She started borrowing money from friends, then strangers online. She made promises she couldn't keep. She got involved with people who cared more about what she could give them than who she was. Every time she failed, my mom reassured her that things would turn around soon. But nothing turns around when the person refuses to take control. Which brings me back to the moment she showed up at my door. She finally stepped inside after minutes of silence. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her phone like it held the last piece of her life together. She looked around my apartment, confused, like she couldn't believe I lived somewhere nice. She kept asking questions, how I afforded it when I moved, what I'd been doing, but I didn't answer. I just let her talk. Then she finally said it. I need help. I'm in trouble, big trouble. Her voice cracked on the last word. And for the first time in years, she didn't sound like the golden child. She sounded like someone who had run out of chances. But she still hadn't told me the whole truth. Not why she was running. Not who she was hiding from. Not how deep her problems really were. And the moment she finally told me, changed everything. Because it wasn't just financial. It wasn't just emotional. It was something bigger, something I never imagined she'd be involved in. And just like that, the past I thought I left behind pulled me right back into its grip, one secret at a time. She sat on the edge of my couch like she was afraid it might swallow her. Her leg kept bouncing, her fingers tapping against each other, her eyes darting around my living room like the walls might be hiding answers. I could feel the tension sitting between us, thick enough to choke on. I didn't want to push her, but I also knew she wasn't here just to reconnect. Whatever brought her here wasn't small. It wasn't something she could ignore anymore. Not with the way she avoided looking directly at me. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and whispered, I got involved in something I shouldn't have. Her voice was so small it didn't sound like her at all. She looked older, worn out, like the last few years had taken more from her than she wanted to admit. She didn't give details right away. Instead, she circled around the truth, telling me bits and pieces like she was scared saying the full story out loud might make everything worse. She told me she'd been trying to start a new business, the latest in a long list of ideas she jumped into without thinking. This time it was some online boutique she wanted to run with a friend. But like all her plans, the excitement came first, the reality much later. She borrowed money she couldn't pay back. She trusted people who didn't care about her. She made promises hoping tomorrow would magically save her. Tomorrow never did. But I could feel there was something deeper behind her words, something she wasn't saying. Her eyes would shift every time I asked a simple question. She'd twist her hands together when she got close to telling the truth. And every time I tried to give her space to breathe, she pulled back like she wasn't sure she deserved it. While she struggled to explain, my mind kept drifting through the past, how we got here, how different we really were. I used to envy her confidence. She walked into rooms like she belonged in the center of everything. I used to wonder how she made friends so easily, how she never doubted herself. But now, watching her crumble in front of me, I realized that confidence had been a kind of shield. A mask she wore because she didn't know how to handle pressure without pretending she was fine. The more she spoke, the clearer it became that a lot of people had taken advantage of her need to feel important. They fed her dreams, encouraged her impulse decisions, and made her believe shortcuts existed. But shortcuts always come with a cost. And she had reached the point where the cost was more than she could handle. She finally admitted that her business partner, someone she barely knew, vanished after taking money from her. Not a small amount. Enough to leave her drowning in obligations she couldn't meet. Every message she sent went unanswered. Every call went straight to voicemail. It was like the person disappeared into thin air. And now other people connected to the situation were demanding she fix everything immediately. She didn't tell me who they were, but the fear in her eyes said enough. She kept saying she owed people, and they were running out of patience. She didn't give names, just shadows. But it wasn't only the business falling apart. It was her life. She'd lost her apartment a few weeks earlier. She had been sleeping on couches, then in her car, hiding the truth from everyone, including our mom. That part shocked me more than anything else. My sister, the one who loved attention, the one who always made sure everyone saw the best version of her, had been living in total silence. No friends helping her. No plans. No confidence left. Just fear. She finally looked up at me with teary eyes and said, I know I wasn't fair to you. I know I took advantage. I know Mom pushed you to give me everything and I never said thank you. I didn't even realize how much you suffered. I don't know. I thought everything would work out for me like it always did before. That confession hit me harder than I expected. I didn't forgive her in that moment, but I did feel something shift. Not sympathy. Something more complicated. Almost like I was seeing the real her for the first time, not the golden child, not the confident sister, but the broken one underneath. Still, there were things she wasn't saying. She kept checking her phone every few minutes. Her shoulders jumped at every notification sound. At one point she even asked me if anyone knew my address. When I said no, she sighed in relief but also looked more nervous, which didn't make sense unless she was hiding something bigger. While she talked, my own internal struggle kept growing. A part of me wanted to show her the same coldness she once showed me. A part of me wanted to ask why she thought she could just walk back into my life after everything. And a small, quiet part of me wondered if helping her again would drag me back into the chaos I fought so hard to escape. But another part, the part shaped by years of sacrifice, still cared. Not because she deserved it, but because she was my sister. And family ties, even the messy ones, are hard to unlearn. As she kept talking, I noticed something else. She avoided mentioning Mom entirely. Not one word. Not a single reference. That was strange. My mother had always been her biggest supporter, the one who defended her every choice. If things were so bad, why didn't she go to her first? Why didn't she tell her what was happening? So I asked. She froze. Her hands stilled. Her breathing changed. She stared at the floor, jaw tight, as if I'd opened a door she had been trying to keep locked. Mom doesn't know, she whispered. She can't know. Before I could ask why, she added, please promise me you won't call her yet. I'm not ready. That made my stomach twist. Because the only reason someone hides something from our mother is if the truth is much bigger, and much worse, than they want to admit. She wasn't just here because she needed money. She wasn't just here because her business failed. She was here because something had gone wrong in a way that involved more than financial problems, more than bad choices, more than fear of disappointing our mother. There was something else in her silence. Something dangerous, something she was still trying to protect me from or maybe hide from me. She finally looked at me again, tears gathering but not falling. I'm scared, she said. Not just of what I owe, but of what might happen if I don't fix this soon. And before I could answer her, before I could even process everything she said, her phone started vibrating nonstop on the couch beside her. 3 calls. 4, 5. All from the same unknown number. She stared at the screen, frozen in place. Then she whispered, they found out where I am. Everything inside me went cold. And just like that, the trouble she was running from was suddenly at my doorstep. The words on the paper were simple, but they hit me like a punch in the stomach. Not a threat. Not anything graphic or dangerous. Just a message that made everything suddenly feel real in a way that sent a cold wave through my entire body. We expect what was promised. No more delays. Nothing dramatic, yet somehow worse because of how calm it sounded. There was a phone number beneath it. Not the one that had been calling her, but another one entirely. A number printed, not handwritten, which made it feel like this wasn't just from one person. It felt organized. Prepared. Like she'd gotten herself into something run by people who handled everything in a very official, deliberate way. My sister covered her face with her hands. I told you they're serious. They don't care about excuses. They just want the money back and they're done waiting. I didn't know what to say. The room felt heavier with every second. It wasn't just the debt, it was the way she couldn't look at me. The way she seemed afraid of herself, afraid of the decisions she made, afraid of the consequences finally reaching her. I set the paper down slowly and tried to keep my voice steady. How long have they been trying to reach you? A few weeks, she whispered. But I thought if I ignored them, they'd, I don't know, move on. Or forget. Or maybe give up. She let out a shaky laugh that wasn't really a laugh. I should have known better. People don't forget money. She leaned back into the couch cushions, like her body had finally given up fighting the weight she had been carrying alone. I sat across from her, trying to piece everything together. There were still so many unanswered questions. How she found these people, what exactly she agreed to, how much she owed, what her friend had done to vanish so completely. Every detail felt like a thread leading to another knot, and the more I tried to tug at one, the tighter everything seemed to pull together. She stared at the ceiling and said quietly, I didn't want to come here. I didn't want you to think I only show up when I need something. The painful part was, that had been true for years. But hearing her admit it struck a different chord now. She wasn't proud of it anymore. She wasn't hiding behind her usual confidence. She was just a person who had run out of ways to pretend she was fine. The silence between us grew heavier. I could feel the unspoken fear. If these people had gone so far as to find where she was hiding, what would they do if they thought she was avoiding them on purpose? I didn't want to let my mind go down that road. Her phone buzzed again. This time just a text. "Where are you?" She turned the screen face down immediately and pulled her knees to her chest. She was trembling now, not just scared but exhausted, like she'd been holding herself together with thin threads for weeks and they were finally snapping. I had spent years being the observer. The quiet one. The one people underestimated. I had survived by staying invisible. But now, invisibility wasn't an option. Not when my sister was falling apart right in front of me. Not when she was whispering things like, "I don't know what to do," with a kind of desperation I had never seen in her eyes before. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain just an inch. The street looked normal, cars passing, neighbors walking dogs, nothing out of place. But the normalcy felt wrong, like the world should have paused to match the tension filling my living room. Behind me, she whispered, "Do you think they followed me?" Her voice was brittle. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think we need to understand everything before we assume anything." She nodded, though she didn't look convinced. I sat back down across from her. "Start from the beginning," I said gently. "All of it. No skipping." She closed her eyes for a moment as if preparing herself, then opened them again. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell you." Little by little she peeled back the layers. How her partner had convinced her to take small loans to grow faster. How she'd watched their online shop gain a little attention and thought things were finally changing. How the partner kept saying, "Just trust me," every time something seemed off. How she ignored the signs because she wanted to believe things were finally working for her, for once in her life. Then the orders stopped. Then the partner disappeared. Then the people who had given them money began asking questions she couldn't answer. She paused often, swallowing hard, trying not to cry as she admitted how many times she lied to mom, to friends, even to herself. She told me she sold some of her things, tried working extra shifts, even tried borrowing from friends, but nothing made even a small dent in what she owed. By the time she finished explaining, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I know I messed up. I know it's my fault for trusting the wrong person. I didn't think the consequences would reach this far." I leaned back, letting her words sink in. The pieces finally came together. She hadn't intentionally done anything harmful. She hadn't gotten involved with something truly dangerous. She was simply careless, desperate, and overly trusting. The debt wasn't enormous, but it was enough to create pressure from people who expected professionalism, not excuses. People who didn't play around with lost money or delays. People who apparently weren't afraid to go looking for her if she didn't respond. The real weight wasn't the money itself. It was the fear, the pressure, the shame. She looked at me with red eyes, voice trembling. "I didn't come here to ask you for anything. I didn't know where else to go. I thought if I could stay here for a little while, maybe I'd finally have the space to figure out what to do." I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how to. Because helping her meant stepping back into a world where I had spent years giving everything without getting anything in return. But refusing her, that wasn't an option either. Not when she was clearly unable to carry this alone. Before I could say anything, her phone buzzed again. Another text. This time longer. She didn't pick it up. She just stared at it like it might explode. I reached for the phone slowly and turned it over. The message read, "We know you're not alone anymore. Tell us where to meet. We're waiting." My heart thudded once hard. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were inching inward. My sister looked at me with wide, terrified eyes, waiting for me to say something, anything. But I didn't know what to say. Not yet. All I knew was that the moment we'd both been avoiding, the moment everything would collide, was coming faster than either of us expected. And there was no avoiding it now. 8+. The words on the paper were simple, but they hit me like a punch in the stomach. Not a threat. Not anything graphic or dangerous. Just a message that made everything suddenly feel real in a way that sent a cold wave through my entire body. We expect what was promised. No more delays. Nothing dramatic, yet somehow worse because of how calm it sounded. There was a phone number beneath it. Not the one that had been calling her, but another one entirely. A number printed, not handwritten, which made it feel like this wasn't just from one person. It felt organized. Prepared. Like she'd gotten herself into something run by people who handled everything in a very official, deliberate way. My sister covered her face with her hands. "I told you they're serious. They don't care about excuses. They just want the money back and they're done waiting." I didn't know what to say. The room felt heavier with every second. It wasn't just the debt, it was the way she couldn't look at me. The way she seemed afraid of herself, afraid of the decisions she made, afraid of the consequences finally reaching her. I set the paper down slowly and tried to keep my voice steady. How long have they been trying to reach you? A few weeks, she whispered. But I thought if I ignored them, they'd, I don't know, move on, or forget, or maybe give up. She let out a shaky laugh that wasn't really a laugh. I should have known better. People don't forget money. She leaned back into the couch cushions, like her body had finally given up fighting the weight she had been carrying alone. I sat across from her, trying to piece everything together. There were still so many unanswered questions. How she found these people, what exactly she agreed to, how much she owed, what her friend had done to vanish so completely. Every detail felt like a thread leading to another knot, and the more I tried to tug at one, the tighter everything seemed to pull together. She stared at the ceiling and said quietly, I didn't want to come here. I didn't want you to think I only show up when I need something. The painful part was, that had been true for years. But hearing her admit it struck a different chord now. She wasn't proud of it anymore. She wasn't hiding behind her usual confidence. She was just a person who had run out of ways to pretend she was fine. The silence between us grew heavier. I could feel the unspoken fear. If these people had gone so far as to find where she was hiding, what would they do if they thought she was avoiding them on purpose? I didn't want to let my mind go down that road. Her phone buzzed again. This time just a text. Where are you? She turned the screen face down immediately and pulled her knees to her chest. She was trembling now, not just scared but exhausted, like she'd been holding herself together with thin threads for weeks and they were finally snapping. I had spent years being the observer. The quiet one. The one people underestimated. I had survived by staying invisible. But now, invisibility wasn't an option. Not when my sister was falling apart right in front of me. Not when she was whispering things like, I don't know what to do, with a kind of desperation I had never seen in her eyes before. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain just an inch. The street looked normal, cars passing, neighbors walking dogs, nothing out of place. But the normalcy felt wrong, like the world should have paused to match the tension filling my living room. Behind me, she whispered, Do you think they followed me? Her voice was brittle. I don't know, I said honestly. But I think we need to understand everything before we assume anything. She nodded, though she didn't look convinced. I sat back down across from her. Start from the beginning, I said gently. All of it. No skipping. She closed her eyes for a moment as if preparing herself, then opened them again. Okay, she whispered. I'll tell you. Little by little she peeled back the layers. How her partner had convinced her to take small loans to grow faster. How she'd watched their online shop gain a little attention and thought things were finally changing. How the partner kept saying, just trust me, every time something seemed off. How she ignored the signs because she wanted to believe things were finally working for her, for once in her life. Then the orders stopped. Then the partner disappeared. Then the people who had given them money began asking questions she couldn't answer. She paused often, swallowing hard, trying not to cry as she admitted how many times she lied to mom, to friends, even to herself. She told me she sold some of her things, tried working extra shifts, even tried borrowing from friends, but nothing made even a small dent in what she owed. By the time she finished explaining, her voice was barely above a whisper. I know I messed up. I know it's my fault for trusting the wrong person. I didn't think the consequences would reach this far. I leaned back, letting her words sink in. The pieces finally came together. She hadn't intentionally done anything harmful. She hadn't gotten involved with something truly dangerous. She was simply careless, desperate, and overly trusting. The debt wasn't enormous, but it was enough to create pressure from people who expected professionalism, not excuses. People who didn't play around with lost money or delays. People who apparently weren't afraid to go looking for her if she didn't respond. The real weight wasn't the money itself. It was the fear, the pressure, the shame. She looked at me with red eyes, voice trembling. I didn't come here to ask you for anything. I didn't know where else to go. I thought if I could stay here for a little while, maybe I'd finally have the space to figure out what to do. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how to. Because helping her meant stepping back into a world where I had spent years giving everything without getting anything in return. But refusing her, that wasn't an option either. Not when she was clearly unable to carry this alone. Before I could say anything, her phone buzzed again. Another text. This time longer. She didn't pick it up. She just stared at it like it might explode. I reached for the phone slowly and turned it over. The message read, We know you're not alone anymore. Tell us where to meet. We're waiting. My heart thudded once hard. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were inching inward. My sister looked at me with wide, terrified eyes, waiting for me to say something, anything. But I didn't know what to say. Not yet. All I knew was that the moment we'd both been avoiding, the moment everything would collide, was coming faster than either of us expected. And there was no avoiding it now. The next morning, I woke up with that uneasy feeling again, the kind that sits in your stomach before you even get out of bed. It felt like the air in the house had changed overnight, heavier somehow, like the walls were holding their breath. Everything in my life had been building toward this moment, though I didn't fully understand why. The choices I'd made, the sacrifices, the long years of giving up what was mine just to keep the peace, all of it felt like it was circling back toward me now. And the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it all felt. I walked into the kitchen and found my mom sitting at the table, staring out the window with a distant expression. She didn't even notice I was there at first. Her hands were clasped tightly together, almost shaking. It was strange to see her like that, vulnerable. This was the same woman who used to lecture me about being strong, who used to push responsibility on me like it was some type of badge. Now she looked afraid. And it wasn't because of me. Something was happening behind the scenes, something bigger than the arguments we'd been having. She finally glanced at me, her eyes softening for a brief second before her usual guard came back up. I wanted to ask what was going on, but I didn't. Not yet. It felt like asking too soon would break something open that neither of us was ready for. So instead, we both pretended nothing was wrong like we'd been doing for years. The silence between us was thick enough to cut. Later that day, I sat alone in my office, staring at the spreadsheets and emails on my screen but not really seeing them. My mind was wrapped around the growing tension at home. No matter how far I'd come, no matter the success or the money, family drama had a way of dragging everything back to square one. It was like the success I'd worked for had only made the cracks deeper. And now, with my sister pretending she was the victim of everything, the situation felt even more unstable. I scrolled through old messages she'd sent me, those short, passive-aggressive ones she used whenever she wanted money or attention. It was strange reading them now, like I was looking at them with new eyes. For years, I had convinced myself I owed her something, that helping her was helping the family. But now I wasn't sure. The pattern was too clear. She wanted control. She wanted what I had. She wanted what she had never worked for. And Mom, she had been the bridge that made it possible. As the tension kept rising, strange things started happening around me. People who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly reached out, asking odd questions about my business, my wealth, my investments. Even distant relatives began popping up, offering fake sweet conversations filled with subtle curiosity. It was unsettling. I couldn't tell if they knew something I didn't yet, or if they were being fed stories I hadn't heard. Either way, it felt like a storm was brewing around me. That evening, I went over to see an old family friend, someone who'd always been honest with me even when I didn't want to hear the truth. He sat me down, looked at me carefully and said, "You know this isn't just about money, right?" It never was. I froze. The way he said it, calm but heavy, sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked. He studied me for a moment as if debating how much he should reveal. "There are things your mother never told you," he finally said. "Things she thought she could protect you from, but in the long run, I don't know if she made it better or worse." My chest tightened. Every part of me wanted answers, but another part wasn't sure I was ready for them. All my life, I'd been given pieces of the truth, but never the full story. Now it felt like the missing pieces were closing in on me. Did it have to do with my sister? I asked quietly. He didn't respond at first, and that silence told me everything. I could feel the tension rise again, sharper this time, like a wire pulling tighter and tighter. He eventually nodded slowly, confirming what I'd already guessed. "She knows more than she should," he said. "And she's using it against you. Your success bothers her more than you realize." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The idea that my sister had been fighting me not out of need but out of something darker, jealousy, resentment, maybe even revenge, made the situation feel much more dangerous than I had thought. When I left his house, the sky had grown darker, heavy clouds swallowing the last bit of daylight. The streets were almost empty, and the silence made me more aware of every step I took. It felt like the world around me was preparing for something. Something big. Something I couldn't escape. By the time I got back home, I found my sister sitting outside my house, waiting for me. She stood up quickly when she saw me, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her expression wasn't soft or emotional. It was sharp. Calculated. She wasn't here to talk things out, she was here to confront me. "We need to talk," she said, her voice cold. A part of me wanted to turn around and walk away, but I knew I couldn't. Everything had been spiraling toward this moment. This conversation. This confrontation. I stepped closer, and before I could speak, she said something that made my entire body go numb. "I know what you're hiding," she whispered. "And I'm not staying quiet anymore." I stared at her, stunned. The confidence in her voice, the threat underneath it, it all felt wrong. How did she know anything? What was she talking about? What had Mom told her? Or what had she discovered on her own? She smirked slightly, as if she could sense the panic rising in me. "You're not the only one with secrets," she added. The words hung in the air like a blade. And in that moment, I knew everything was about to change. Every choice I'd ever made, every sacrifice, every paycheck I'd handed over, it was all connected to something much bigger. Something hidden. Something dangerous. But before I could respond, she turned around and walked away, leaving me standing there alone, overwhelmed and unsure of what was coming next. Whatever truth she thought she had, whatever she planned to expose, it was going to hit harder than anything I'd ever faced. And deep down I could feel it. The real storm was just beginning. When my sister walked away that night, her words echoed in my mind long after her figure disappeared into the shadows. I stood there frozen, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. For a long moment I didn't move. I just stared at the empty space where she had stood, feeling like my entire life had tilted in a direction I wasn't prepared for. It was strange. After everything I'd been through, after years of sacrifice, after becoming financially successful despite all the obstacles, the thing that scared me most wasn't losing money or status. It was the fear of finally uncovering a truth that had been buried since childhood. The next morning, I decided I couldn't continue living in that fog of uncertainty. I needed clarity, no matter how painful it might be. I drove to my mom's house with a knot in my stomach. When she opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were red, her shoulders tense, and for the first time she didn't try to hide how shaken she was. I walked inside quietly and sat down at the dining table, the same table where so many arguments, sacrifices, and decisions had taken place. It felt surreal being there again, except now there was no anger in me, just a need to understand. Mom sat across from me slowly and wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was grounding herself. The silence stretched between us until she finally spoke, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I always thought I was protecting you," she said. "But I think I only made things harder." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She took a shaky breath and told me everything. The truth wasn't some dramatic secret or scandal. It was something painfully human: fear, insecurity, and mistakes layered over time. She admitted that she'd always worried my sister wouldn't be strong enough to handle life on her own. She saw her as fragile, as someone who needed extra support. And somewhere along the way, she convinced herself that the only way to keep our family from falling apart was to push responsibility onto me. "I shouldn't have made you carry her burdens," she whispered. "You were just a kid too. But you were always the one who stepped up, and I relied on that. Maybe too much." Her voice cracked, and she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "And when you started doing well," she continued, "your success made her feel even smaller. She felt like you were leaving her behind." Hearing those words didn't erase the years of strain, but something inside me softened. For the first time, I saw the situation for what it truly was: three people trying to navigate life with flaws, fears, and misunderstandings, each carrying emotional baggage they didn't know how to let go of. "I didn't hide anything from her," Mom said quietly. "But she built her own story in her head, convinced herself you owed her because she never found her own path." It finally made sense. My sister's resentment wasn't about money. It was about identity. About feeling overlooked. About watching me succeed while she felt stuck. Later that afternoon, I drove to see my sister. She was sitting on her porch, knees pulled to her chest, staring straight ahead like she'd been waiting for me. For a moment, she looked so much like the kid I grew up with, the one I used to protect, that it was hard to stay angry. I sat beside her. No yelling, no accusations. Just silence. "You don't owe me anything," she said suddenly, her voice small. But I didn't know how to say I felt left out. "You became everything I wasn't. And I guess I started believing Mom loved you more. Even when she didn't." I turned toward her slowly. "I never wanted to hurt you," I said. "I was just trying to survive like everyone else." She nodded, and for the first time in years, she looked me in the eye without hostility. There was sadness there, but also honesty. "I said things I shouldn't have," she admitted. "I thought if I scared you, maybe you'd pay attention to me again." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, but because they were so painfully true. She didn't hate me. She hated feeling invisible. We talked for a long time, about childhood, the pressure I felt, the pressure she felt, and the mistakes we both made. It wasn't a magical conversation that fixed everything instantly, but it was real. And sometimes that's more powerful than perfection. By the time the sun set, the heaviness between us had loosened. She didn't apologize directly for everything, and I didn't expect her to. Healing rarely comes wrapped in perfect sentences. But she did something just as important. She acknowledged the truth. Before I left, she whispered, "I'm glad you made it. Even if I was jealous. I'm glad." Those words stayed with me. In the weeks that followed, things slowly settled. My relationship with my mom became more honest, less forced. My sister started taking small steps toward becoming independent, not because I pushed her but because she finally wanted to. That was the biggest change of all. As for me, my success didn't feel like a burden anymore. It didn't feel like something I had to hide or defend. It felt earned. And for the first time, I allowed myself to be proud without guilt. Looking back now, I see the entire journey differently. The long years of giving up my paychecks, the resentment, the conflicts, the tension, it all shaped me, but it didn't break me. What mattered most wasn't becoming a millionaire or proving anyone wrong. What mattered was understanding that sometimes the people who hurt us aren't villains, they're just scared, confused, or trying to make sense of their own lives. And sometimes the hardest battles aren't about money at all. They're about finally letting go of what you were taught to carry, and choosing peace instead of pain. In the end, we didn't become a perfect family. But we became an honest one. And that was enough. If there's one takeaway from everything I lived through, it's this. Success means nothing if you lose yourself along the way, but it means everything when you learn who you truly are. And I finally did.